It was a chilly autumn evening when Sarah boarded the old school bus. The seats were worn, the windows fogged with condensation, and the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. As the bus trundled along the dark, winding roads, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of her stomach. The other students chattered nervously, their voices echoing off the metal walls of the bus. But Sarah remained silent, her eyes fixed on the window. The dense forest seemed to close in around them, casting eerie shadows that danced in the flickering light of the overhead bulbs. Suddenly, the bus jolted to a stop, the engine sputtering to a halt. The driver cursed under his breath as he tried to restart it, but to no avail. Panic spread through the bus like wildfire as the realization set in they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. With no other option, the driver instructed everyone to disembark and wait at the desolate bus stop until help arrived. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she scanned the darkness, half expecting something to leap out at her from the shadows. Hours passed with no sign of rescue, and the chill of the night seeped into their bones. Just as hope began to wane, a distant sound echoed through the silence. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. The students huddled together, their breath coming out in white puffs in the frigid air. Sarah's pulse raced as the footsteps drew closer, each one sending shivers down her spine. Then, emerging from the darkness, was a figure cloaked in black. Its face was obscured by a hood, but its eyes gleamed with a sinister light. Frozen in terror, Sarah watched as the figure approached, its footsteps echoing like a death knell in the stillness of the night. And then, with a chilling whisper that sent shivers down her spine, it spoke. "Welcome to my domain, children. You'll never leave." With a scream, Sarah bolted into the darkness, her heart pounding in her chest as she ran for her life. But no matter how fast she ran, the figure was always one step behind, its presence looming like a specter in the night. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Sarah realized with a sinking heart that they were never meant to escape the clutches of the mysterious figure that haunted the desolate roads. For in the realm of darkness, there was no escape from the horrors that lurked within. But just when Sarah thought all hope was lost, she stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin hidden deep within the woods. Desperate and with nowhere else to turn, she pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The cabin was musty and dimly lit, but it offered sanctuary from the terrors of the night. Sarah collapsed onto the dusty floor, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she waited for the inevitable. But to her surprise, the figure did not follow. It seemed that whatever dark force had bound it to the desolate roads could not breach the threshold of the cabin. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight filtered through the cracks in the cabin walls, Sarah knew that she had survived the nightmarish ordeal. But as she ventured back out into the light of day, she couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness still lingered, waiting patiently for its next victim. For in the realm of nightmares, the horrors never truly ended. It was a stormy night when Emma boarded the old school bus. Rain lashed against the windows, and thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. As the bus rattled along the deserted road, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of her stomach. The other students huddled together, their faces pale with fear as lightning illuminated the darkened interior of the bus. But Emma remained calm, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Suddenly, the bus lurched to a stop, the engine coughing and sputtering before falling silent. Panic spread through the bus like wildfire as the realization dawned on them. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no way to call for help. With no other choice, the driver instructed everyone to remain on the bus until the storm passed. But as the minutes turned into hours, The atmosphere inside the bus grew increasingly tense. And then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the bus into darkness. The students screamed in terror as they groped blindly in the blackness, their fear escalating with each passing moment. Amidst the chaos, a voice broke through the darkness, a whisper so soft it was almost lost amidst the cacophony of screams. "Who's there?" Emma called out, her voice trembling with fear. But there was no answer, only the sound of ragged breathing and the faint rustle of movement. Heart pounding in her chest, Emma reached out into the darkness, her fingers closing around something cold and clammy. With a gasp, she recoiled, her mind reeling with terror as she realized what she had touched. And then, with a sickening thud, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the horror that lay before them. Scattered throughout the bus were the lifeless bodies of the other students, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Blood dripped from their wounds, pooling on the grimy floor of the bus. And standing among them, with eyes gleaming in the dim light, was a figure cloaked in darkness. With a scream, Emma bolted from her seat and ran towards the front of the bus, desperate to escape the nightmare that had unfolded before her eyes. But no matter how fast she ran, the figure was always just behind her, its presence looming like a spectre in the night. As she reached the front of the bus, Emma threw open the door and stumbled out into the storm, the rain soaking her to the bone as she ran for her life. Behind her, she could hear the figure's footsteps echoing in the darkness, each one sending shivers down her spine. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Emma collapsed to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she realized that she was the only one left. For in the realm of nightmares, there was no escape from the horrors that lurked within. But as she looked back at the bus, now nothing more than a shadow in the distance, Emma knew that the nightmare was far from over. And as she trudged home through the rain-soaked streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was still following her, waiting patiently for its next victim. For in the realm of nightmares, the horrors never truly ended. The sun had long since set as Emily stepped onto the creaky old school bus. The air was thick with anticipation, and a sense of unease hung heavy in the atmosphere. As the bus rumbled along the deserted roads, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The other students whispered nervously amongst themselves, their eyes darting around the dimly lit interior of the bus. But Emily remained silent, her gaze fixed on the window as the moon cast eerie shadows across the landscape. Suddenly, the bus lurched to a stop, the engine sputtering and wheezing before falling silent. Panic swept through the bus like wildfire as the realization dawned on them. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere, miles from home. With no other choice, the driver instructed everyone to exit the bus and wait by the side of the road until help arrived. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped off the bus, the darkness enveloping her like a suffocating cloak. Hours passed with no sign of rescue, and the chill of the night settled into Emily's bones. Just as despair began to take hold, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Standing at the edge of the forest was a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. Frozen in terror, Emily watched as the figure approached, its footsteps echoing ominously in the stillness of the night. And then, with a voice like ice, it spoke. "Welcome home, Emily. We've been waiting for you." With a scream, Emily turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest as she fled into the darkness. But no matter how fast she ran, the figure was always just behind her, its presence looming like a spectre in the night. Finally, breathless and trembling, Emily burst through the front door of her house and slammed it shut behind her. She leaned against the door, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. But the feeling of dread refused to leave her, clinging to her like a second skin. As Emily ventured deeper into the house, she was greeted by silence, an oppressive, suffocating silence that seemed to press down on her from all sides. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking threat, every creak of the floorboards a whisper of impending doom. And then, from the darkness, came a voice, a low, guttural whisper that sent chills down Emily's spine. "Welcome home, Emily. You can run, but you can never hide." With a gasp, Emily spun around, her eyes searching the darkness for any sign of the intruder. But there was nothing, only the empty silence of the house, and the feeling of dread that hung heavy in the air. For in the realm of nightmares, there was no escape from the horrors that lurked within.